Welcome back to the Acceptance Project podcast. I'm your host, Bryan. How many times have you started something and then just kind of drifted away from it? Yeah, me too, more than I care to admit. I've got projects sitting in my office right now that I swear I'm almost done with. I've got stuff out in the garage that I walk past every day thinking, that's going to look really good someday. And then I keep walking. If I'm being honest, sometimes I'll even move it. I'll put it up high on a shelf and tell myself I'm protecting it, keeping it safe. What I'm really doing is making sure I don't have to look at it. Out of sight, out of mind. Problem solved, right? Or maybe for you, it's not a project. Maybe you started the year thinking, this is it, I'm getting healthy. And now the treadmill has turned into a very expensive clothes rack, and you're halfway through a pizza on a Tuesday night thinking, cooking just feels like too much today. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the things we started, the things we meant to do, and the dreams that are still there waiting on us. You keep eating. I'll go first. I was sitting in my dentist's office the other day, which already puts you in a reflective mood because you're stuck in a chair with nowhere to go. I looked over and saw this little frame sitting next to me with a poem inside. It's one I've seen 100 times, but this time I actually read it and thought about it. The poem was Don't Quit by Edgar A. He lived from 1881 to 1959, and at one point, he was one of the most widely read poets in America. They called him the people's poet, and that fits. He didn't write to impress scholars. He wrote for everyday people just trying to get through the day. His work showed up in hundreds of newspapers, and millions of people started their mornings reading his poems. When you read his writing, it doesn't feel complicated. It feels like someone sitting across from you saying, I know it's hard, but keep going. So I'm sitting there in that dentist chair reading this poem again, and it hit me differently. Maybe you've heard it before, but if not, here it is. Don't Quit by Edgar A. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low but the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is strange with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns, and many failures turn about when we might have won had we stuck it out. Don't give up, though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the clouds of doubt. You can never tell how close you are. It may be near when it seems so far. So stick to the fight when you're hardest hit. It's when things seem worse that you must not quit. My 3 favorite lines in this poem are, first one, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life will wear you down sometimes. You may feel tired, discouraged, or overwhelmed. When that happens, it is perfectly human to pause, breathe, step back, and gather strength. There is no shame in slowing down, but slowing down is not the same thing as giving up. He reminds the reader that temporary rest is part of perseverance, not its opposite. A runner in a long race may stop to catch their breath, but the race is not over unless they decide to walk off the track entirely. The deeper message of the line is about endurance through difficult seasons. Many people abandon their goals at the exact moment when success is closer than they realize. The poem suggests that progress often looks messy and slow. Sometimes it even looks like failure. Yet, if a person keeps moving forward, even in small steps, the story is not finished. Remind yourself, my story doesn't end here. Now, my second favorite line is, life is strange with its twists and turns. Most of us imagine life as a straight road that leads directly to success. Study hard, work hard, be kind, do the right things, and the destination should appear exactly where we expected. But real life is more like a curvy road through mountains with curves so steep that sometimes you can see your own taillights. And if you've never traveled a curvy mountain road, you may not get that reference. But if you have, then you know sometimes those curves can almost turn us completely around in circles if you take them too fast. Sometimes the road dips into valleys that seem to take you farther from where you hope to go. Plans change, people lose jobs, relationships shift, Health changes, and dreams take unexpected detours. Those are the twists and turns. What Edgar A. Guest reminds the reader is that these turns don't mean the journey is wrong. They're simply part of the highway of being human. A setback can eventually reveal a better direction. A delay can create strength. What first looks like failure may actually be the bend in the road that leads somewhere meaningful. Now, my third and often misunderstood favorite line is success is failure turned inside out. I think what he means here is that success and failure are often much closer to each other than we think. The moment that feels like failure may actually be the final stage before something works. Many people stop trying right when they're closest to a breakthrough. Have you ever tried to fix something that is broken? There have been many projects where I've tried relentlessly to make it work. So many times I called my dad to get that age old wisdom he always had. The man could have fixed a gas lantern at the bottom of the ocean with a matchstick. He always knew just what to do. And many times, after trying everything I knew, I would call him, and with a few short directions, whatever I was working on, well, it just worked. Sometimes I figured it out without having to call him. Not often, but sometimes. And then there were times I knew the fastest way to solve the issue was to call Dad. Regardless, I didn't quit. He had the answer. It didn't matter that I didn't come up with my own answer. I learned from his wisdom. Stop reinventing the wheel. Others have information that can help us solve our problems, big or small. Don't be afraid to ask. Success comes from that willingness to try again, and then ask for help. Imagine a miner digging for gold. He works for months, strikes rock after rock, and eventually gives up in frustration. What he never discovered is that the gold was only 3 feet deeper. His failure was not the work he did. The failure was stopping just before success revealed itself. Guest's idea suggests that what we call failure is often part of the process that eventually becomes success. The struggle, the mistakes, the setbacks, and the frustrations are not the opposite of success. In other words, if you could turn failure inside out and look at it from the other side, you might realize it was simply unfinished success. So, what have we learned? Every single person eventually reaches a moment where effort feels pointless. The road feels uphill, the progress feels slow, the doubt creeps in and whispers that, well, maybe it would be easier to stop trying. Guest understood that moment, and his message was clear. The moment when quitting feels like the only option is often the very moment when things are about to change. If we really think about success as failure turned inside out, we realize the thing that looks like defeat today might actually be the beginning of the solution or success. That idea is exactly what we talk about here on the Acceptance Project podcast. People grow, cultures change, and lives transform, not because the road is smooth, but because someone keeps walking when it would be easier to stop. And sometimes the difference between the life you have today and the life you're meant to live tomorrow is simply the decision to take one more step forward. So there's 3 lessons for not quitting. Here are 3 simple reminders to hold on to when quitting starts to feel tempting. First, remember that struggle does not mean you're failing. It often means you are learning. Almost every achievement is built on attempts that prove that wasn't the correct solution. We aren't failing, we're learning what doesn't work. Think about Thomas Edison experimenting again and again before the light bulb finally worked. Each failure was not the end of the journey. It was information. It was feedback. It was one step closer to the answer. When we feel defeated, it helps to remember that the path forward is often hidden inside the attempts that did not succeed just yet. The second lesson for not quitting, remember that your current moment is not the final chapter of your story. When we are discouraged, our minds have a way of convincing us that the present moment is permanent. It tells us that things will always feel this way. But history and human experience show something very different. The people who shape the world almost always go through seasons where things stall, doors close, and progress slows. Rosa Parks spent years working toward justice before the moment on that bus changed history. The breakthrough often arrives after a long stretch where it feels like nothing is happening. Imagine if Rosa continued to give up her seat. Imagine if Lincoln decided that the things he had faced in life were too much and he never became president. Imagine if we are on the edge of something amazing that is going to not only change our lives, but have a deeply impactful, everlasting moment on someone else. Now, the third thing for not quitting is to remember that progress is usually quieter and slower than we expect. We tend to imagine success as one dramatic moment where everything changes overnight. In reality, most meaningful change is built through small, consistent steps taken over time. A conversation, a decision, another attempt, another day of showing up. Those steps may not look impressive in the moment, but over time, they build something powerful: a life, a movement, maybe even a legacy. So when defeat begins whispering that it might be easier to stop, hold on to those three things. Struggle means you're learning. This moment is not the end of your story, and progress is often happening quietly, even when you cannot see it. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is simply take the next step and keep going. As we come to a close for this week, I want to leave you with one simple thought. Somewhere in your life right now, there's probably a project sitting on a shelf. Maybe it isn't a physical project at all. Maybe it's a dream you once had, a book you wanted to write, a conversation you've been meaning to have, or maybe it's even a life you're thinking about stepping into. And maybe you've walked past it so many times that it's almost become invisible. But here's the truth: most people don't fail because they're not capable. They fail because they stop one step too soon. The poem we talked about today reminds us that the moment things feel hardest is often when something important is just around the corner. So if life has you feeling a little worn down right now, take a breath. Rest if you need to. Step back if you need to. Ask for help. There is no shame in pausing, but don't you quit. The story of your life is still being written, and the page you're on right now might be the chapter where things begin to turn around. The next chapter is going to be an amazing adventure. Remember this: struggle means you're learning. This moment is not the end of your story, and progress is often happening quietly even when you cannot see it. So keep walking, keep trying, and keep showing up. The world changes because ordinary people refuse to quit trying to achieve extraordinary possibilities. If today's episode meant something to you, I want to ask you a small favor. Share this podcast with someone who might need the reminder not to quit. Maybe it's a friend who feels stuck, a colleague who is facing a tough season, or maybe it's someone who has quietly been carrying more than they let on. Sometimes the right message at the right moment can make all the difference. Pass it along and help someone remember that their story is not over yet. And just remember, the road gets steep for everyone at some point. The moment when you feel the most tired, the most discouraged, or the most tempted to walk away is often the very moment when progress is closer than you think, so you mustn't quit. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of one another. The Acceptance Project podcast is a production of Bridging Success, LLC. To learn more about the podcast and our work, please visit bridgingsuccess.com. This podcast and its contents are for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. I'm Dr. Bryan Gross, but I'm not a licensed therapist. The topics and opinions shared by me and any guests are our own and should not replace professional or medical advice. If you're seeking mental health support, medical guidance, or help with personal matters, please reach out to a licensed professional who can provide the individual support you need.